Hello, this is wmpyr, here to talk a little bit about Jeet Kune Do. Okay, let me see. When I was learning martial arts here in the U.S., my first experience was in Japan, which was judo, and it was in PE class. But my first real commercial school was here in the U.S., where I joined a school where the teacher taught his own style. It was a hybrid style, and it mainly consisted of Kuksulwan and Arnis, the Filipino martial arts of Arnis. So those were the two main styles. I mean, he was very, very knowledgeable with other styles, and I'm sure he integrated other stuff too. But those were the two that I'm aware of, the two main ones. And anyway, my grades were bad. This is junior high school, so my parents were pretty much like, if your grades dropped, then we're pulling you out of martial arts. And my grades dropped. I was just not a very academically inclined student. So they pulled me out, and but you know what? That didn't stop me. I kept training martial arts. In my mind, I just pretended like I was still going to school. So I bought books and stuff to, use as textbooks, and one of them was the Tao of Jeet Kune Do. And so I was self-studying JKD. When I got to college, in college, a friend of mine ordered from Black Belt magazine Paul Vunek's JKD. And his Sensei Paul Vonak's Jeet Kune Do video series, his instructional video series were advertised all over Black Belt magazine, Inside Kung Fu magazine, and whatnot. And it said that he had taught Navy SEALs, FBI, things like that. So it's just like, it was very impressive. It looked fascinating, and so when my friend ordered it, he let me watch it, and he lent me the VHS tape, and I got to watch it as many times as I wanted, and I was blown away. Like I said to you guys before, I was self-studying JKD, but then when I saw Sensei Paul Vonak's actual JKD videos, not just reading from the magazine and trying to guess what it's about and stuff. I mean, when I actually saw the video, I was blown away. I was like, this is Jeet Kune Do. It just felt so different from Bruce Lee's, and I, in my opinion, that's what Bruce Lee probably wanted. Is he? I believe he was along the ways of thinking where his JKD would be different from your JKD, and what we're seeing is his JKD very different. Bruce Lee's JKD very different from Danny Inosanto's JKD. Danny Inosanto's JKD very different from Paul Vonak's JKD. And so that means, that's a good thing. That's, I think, what Bruce Lee wanted, that the individual, comes alive, and the individual comes first. He just didn't want people to be like mindless clones, right? So anyway, when I saw Paul Vonak's version of this street Jeet Kune Do, I was like, wow, this is not what I had imagined Jeet Kune Do to be like at all. I mean, it blew me away, especially in the realms of trapping. I was like, what in the world is going on here with this trapping? It is insane. The way Sensei Paul Vanak does it just looks out of this world, And I was fascinated by it. I was like, this guy should be in movies. How come he's not in movies doing this stuff? It would look so great, And I wanted to do that too, the trapping stuff. I wanted to use those techniques. I wanted to learn those techniques. And in the videos, there were some videos where he said, this is our secret weapon. What separates us from other styles is our trapping. We're devastating from here. And I was like, I want that. Well, when at the time when I would spar full contact, I would try the trapping. and I was never able to do it. It would not happen, at least not like the way in the videos. And fortunately, at the college I was going to, I met a couple of people that were JKD people, and talking to them, and even some Wing Chun people and Kung Fu people, people who did trapping, and they helped me out. I wasn't able to do it in full contact. It just I couldn't do it, and I was like, damn, this is so disappointing. Um, so I was like, I need to solve the mystery of how to make it work, you know? And the other part of me was, like I said, one of the first commercial martial arts school that I went to was, they taught Filipino martial arts. So Filipino martial arts was there for me since the beginning, pretty much. But um, I kind of put it aside to where I really, really liked it. I really enjoyed it, and I thought it was great. And I knew there was an empty hand portion to it, but when it came to full contact, so if I had to go up against someone from a different style and go full contact against this guy, so in other words, a challenge match, right? When I had to do that, I used Muay Thai kickboxing, I used Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, I used other stuff. I didn't use Filipino martial arts, even though I knew there was an empty hand portion to Filipino martial arts. It just, why do that when Muay Thai kickboxing, BJJ, it was just so much more straightforward. I knew exactly the strategies, what to do, and it was just so much simpler. So I used that, and it was very effective. But Filipino martial arts was very special for me. So weapon-wise, that's what I went to. Did I use nunchucks, kamas, tonfas? No, it was Filipino martial arts all the way. On the street, if I ever got into a situation, it was going to be Filipino martial arts. The guy's bigger than me. He might be in a gang. I don't know what. I'm using, whatever I can find that's similar to a stick. I'm using a knife. I'm going to be using Filipino martial arts. So that was it. But when it came to empty hand fighting and challenge matches, I didn't use it. That's the honest truth at the time. So I wanted to figure out this trapping, that watching Sensei Paul Vonak's JKD. He has a very, very strong Filipino martial arts influence, which comes from Professor Danny Nosanto, no doubt, right? So Sensei Paul Vanak seems like he's very, very comfortable with the sticks. He's awesome with the sticks, and in particular the Filipino martial arts, right? So he, in the trapping stuff, he said he shows you some drills to learn for the trapping, and one of them was hubad. So it comes from Filipino martial arts. So that's when I was like, oh, okay. So he just linked the trapping with Filipino martial arts for me. And I had never thought of, I learned the Heaven Six. I learned it empty hand to do it, but I never saw it as trapping. It was never taught to me that way. It was strike, 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 strike. So here he was, going check, 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 strike, check, 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 strike, salute, check, check, and that kind of stuff. So it was like, whoa, okay, so he's checking, trapping, or all right, so he was linking it to trapping. I wanted to learn trapping, so then I was like, let me focus on Filipino martial arts in a different way now, because before it was just all weapons for me, and now it was like, let's focus on the empty hand part. In fact, when I do full contact fighting, let's try to bring in the Filipino martial arts to the Muay Thai, to the BJJ. Why not? Instead of just doing pure Muay Thai, pure BJJ. So I did. I started bringing it in. And that change in viewpoint was really influenced, at least partially, or a strong influence came from watching Sensei Paul Vonak's JKD, for sure, And so, yeah, the way I sparred from then on in full contact was I would maybe start off with Muay Thai kickboxing, And if things went really bad, I ended up on the ground, I would use BJJ. But if not, I would use Muay Thai kickboxing. But if I felt threatened, if I felt like it wasn't doing too well, then my secret weapon was Jeet Kune Do. And I'm not a Jeet Kune Do guy. I'm not um, how do you call it, a pure Jeet Kune Do students. The studying that I did was on my own and cross training with Jeet Kune Do students. And actually, there were two instructors that I also messed around with a little bit, but it's a little bit. So it was really more just my own, and then watching Sensei Paul Vonak's videos. And I also was able to get my hands on Professor Danny Dos Santos videos too, so I got to see some of that too. And anyway, what I'm trying to tell you is I'm not a proper JKD student, So I always consider myself, core was a Filipino martial arts guy, so I was able to take the Filipino martial arts as my backbone, and it gave me the confidence to do JKD, in a full contact situation. So it was thanks to my Filipino martial arts. So my JKD was more like a Filipino martial arts modified to JKD kind of thing, or trying to be more like JKD in empty hand. So that's kind of the way that I was at the time. So that big change to really focus on my empty hand skills, Filipino martial arts for empty hand. That was a big new thing for me at the time when I was in college, which was many years ago. But until then, it was all sticks. It was knife was something I wanted to get more into, but my experience was very, very little at the time. And it was more like experimenting and getting into that stuff. But really, it was all about sticks, single stick, especially double stick. I was all about that for my Filipino martial arts. But when I started transitioning to single stick, first thing you'll notice, and probably a lot of you too, when you go from double stick to single stick, and you should go back and forth, okay? But when you go from double stick to single stick, man, your skill level is going to rise because you're no longer now limited to double sticks. I know that sounds weird, but it turns into a limitation. And now when you go with single stick, it's like you could just do so much more, skill-wise. So I think a lot of people experience that. I'm not saying single stick is superior or anything like that, but it's a very natural phenomenon. It naturally occurs to a lot of people where they go from double stick to single stick and their skill level just increases, okay? And then when you go from single stick or even double stick to now empty hand, that's very difficult to go to empty hand and really start sharpening your skills there. And I feel like that also takes you to another level. So that really, really helped me when I was really focusing on Heaven 6. How do I make that work in full contact? How do I make the Heaven 6 work in full contact against the boxer? It's that simple. And so just working on that for many years, I feel like really, really sharpened my skill level there and my understanding and appreciation of Filipino martial arts and all martial arts. But I see a lot of people, they do go from double stick to single stick and they notice that skill change, but I don't see a lot of people go from, the weapons to empty hand. I mean, they do also do empty hand and knife stuff, but I don't really see them go to empty hand and then try to answer that question that I battled and struggled with so many years, which is how can you make your Heaven 6 work in full contact against the boxer? And I was obsessed with that. And same idea with trapping. How can I make trapping work in full contact against the boxer? And now many, many, many years later, almost 25 years later in the martial arts, I feel that I have the answer, the solution to both of those, And it's been a long journey, and I will continue to travel on and share my findings with you guys, And Anyway, so that's it for now. Thank you for viewing and take care, folks.